You sit down to work. You've blocked out time, silenced your phone, and told yourself, no distractions today. But within minutes, your mind drifts. You open a new tab. You reach for your phone. You scroll. And before you realize it, you're lost in reels, tweets, and video loops. Then comes the crashed, foggy thinking, restlessness, low motivation, and an eerie inability to focus on anything deeply. This isn't laziness. It's neuroscience. In this video, we're going to explore what happens to your brain when you scroll and why it becomes so hard to focus afterward. We'll break down how dopamine disruption, prefrontal fatigue, and attention fragmentation rewire your cognitive systems. Most importantly, you'll learn science-backed strategies to restore your focus, reset your dopamine, and retrain your attention without going off grid or deleting all your apps. Because the modern world isn't going to stop being digital, but your brain can learn to adapt with discipline and design. Question for you: what if your attention isn't broken, but hijacked by systems you haven't yet mastered? Let's start with dopamine, your brain's motivation molecule. Every time you scroll and encounter something novel, dopamine spikes. But here's the catch: dopamine isn't about pleasure. It's about anticipation. The brain learns to seek more, not stay satisfied. Social media is engineered to exploit this loop. Infinite scroll creates no stopping cue. A variable rewards, some posts good, some not, mimic slot machines. Visual and auditory stimuli overstimulate the dopaminergic pathway. This leads to rapid dopamine peaks, fast dopamine depletion, a crash in motivation, mood, and attention in neuroscience. We call this dopamine receptor downregulation. Your brain starts to expect constant novelty, and without it, normal life feels boring. The consequence: reading, writing, and focused work become harder because they offer slower, delayed dopamine. Challenge: could your inability to focus be less about discipline and more about a reward system flooded by micro hits of digital stimulation? The prefrontal cortex is your brain's command center. It governs the J working memory, X impulse control, J long-term planning, chat, deep focus. It's also the most recently evolved and easily fatigued part of your brain. Scrolling trains your prefrontal cortex to process J's short bursts of input, J fast shifts between unrelated topics, J surface level engagement over time. This leads to what researchers call attention switching fatigue. In studies, participants exposed to multitasking environments showed the G 40% lower task performance, X reduced gray matter density in the anterior cingulate cortex at attention regulation zone, increased errors in logical reasoning tasks. This is not just distraction. It's neural conditioning. Every scroll is a rep, and you're training your brain to expect stimulation, not sustain attention. Ask yourself, what is your phone teaching your brain to expect? And how is that shaping your ability to finish what matters? Ever wonder why you feel so mentally cloudy after a scrolling session? Enter the default mode network, DMN, a set of brain regions activated during rest, daydreaming, and self-reflection. It's essential for memory consolidation, creativity, emotional regulation, but excessive screen use, especially rapid scrolling, disrupts DMN activation. Instead of slipping into recovery mode, your brain remains in a state of fragmented thought, the incomplete cognitive loops, reduced introspection. This creates the numb but restless state many feel post scroll, not tired, but not focused, not relaxed, but not productive. In fMRI studies, high screen users showed lower DMN connectivity, impaired mental imagery, difficulty sustaining internal attention. The mind becomes noisy, and silence starts to feel uncomfortable. Challenge. When was the last time you sat with stillness and let your brain default to its natural rhythm? Instead of filling the gaps with thumb flicks. Here's the core paradox. Scrolling feels effortless, but it trains effort out of you. Why? Because scrolling teaches your brain to expect immediate reward with minimal effort. Each swipe up a potential dopamine spike. This shifts the effort-reward ratio in your neural expectations. Then, when you sit down to write, build, or create, you face delay, resistance, and low stimulation. Your brain registers this as a reward prediction error. You expect pleasure. You get boredom, so it seeks escape. Over time, this shrinks your mental endurance, lowers your threshold for frustration, reduces your tolerance for monotony, which deep work requires, and worst of all, you stop trusting yourself to push through. Ask yourself, are you letting your brain learn that pleasure should be instant, or are you retraining it to pursue depth with patience? Scrolling at night isn't just a bad habit. It's a biological circadian disruptor. Here's what happens. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin production. This delays your sleep onset. Poor sleep quality leads to reduced prefrontal activity the next day, impaired executive function, lower focus, higher reactivity, but it doesn't end there. Late night scrolling also activates the sympathetic nervous system. Content that's emotional, political, or shocking raises cortisol, which inhibits deep sleep. In one Stanford study, participants who used screens 30 minutes before bed had 50% less deep sleep, 20% higher cortisol upon waking, a greater distractibility throughout the day. You don't just lose rest. You lose cognitive horsepower. Challenge. What would shift if your night routine became a training ground for tomorrow's clarity? Instead of a surrender to dopamine drift, scrolling is rarely neutral. Even when passive, your brain is analyzing faces, comparing status, tracking likes and expressions. This activates the salience network, which detects threats and rewards in your environment. The result: increased emotional processing load, subtle stress response, especially with upward comparisons, cognitive fatigue. You may not realize it, but micro-stressors accumulate. A flash of envy here, a FOMO spike there, and your nervous system subtly burns out. This leaves less bandwidth for decision-making, empathy. A strategic thinking psychologists now call this social media fatigue. But neuroscience shows it's more than fatigue. It's cognitive depletion. Ask yourself, how many of your brain's best resources are being spent on people you don't know? on platforms that don't care, leaving you with less for what matters most. Here's the good news: attention is plastic. You can retrain your focus, even if it's been damaged by years of scrolling. But it takes deliberate practice, controlled deprivation, biological support, step 1 dopamine reset, like 24-72 hours without scrolling, based apps replace with analog novelty, walking, conversation, reading. This resensitizes your dopamine system. Step 20, attention rebuilding, practice single task sprints, 25 minutes. No distractions. Use a timer, silence notifications. Keep a notepad for stray thoughts. Build up to 90-minute deep work blocks. Step 3, visual and auditory hygiene. Begin mornings without screens for 30 minutes. Go outside. Sunlight improves alertness and dopamine. Use brown noise or silence during focus blocks. Step 4, scheduled scrolling. Set 1 to 2 15-minute blocks per day for scrolling. Never scroll when bored, only by choice. Log how you feel before and after challenge. What one habit can you implement today? Not to eliminate dopamine, but to retrain your brain to focus again. Once you remove the scroll-induced fog, your brain becomes capable of flow, the state of peak performance. Flow requires clear goals, deep engagement, the no distractions, moderate challenge. Neurologically, flow activates high dopamine, fluff norepinephrine, transients of the default mode network, a heightened learning and memory circuits, but flow and scrolling cannot coexist. One trains your brain for depth, the other for dopamine drift. Want the edge in creativity, leadership, learning, and love. Train your brain to tolerate boredom, pursue complexity, delay gratification. It starts with how you use your thumb. Ask yourself, what future version of you could emerge if your attention became your greatest asset, not your biggest liability? You're not broken. Your brain is just overstimulated, undertrained, and hijacked by design systems. But you now understand the science-y. HJ, dopamine depletion impairs drive. Prefrontal fatigue fragments cognition. Scroll. Induced stress drains your focus. Deep work requires a different neurochemical balance. You don't need to quit technology. You need to use it on your terms. Scroll less. Sit with boredom. Seek silence. Train your focus like a skill, because your ability to pay attention, to stay present, to finish what you start, is your most powerful tool in the modern world. Final question: what new discipline will you begin this week to reclaim the brain that scrolling tried to rewire? If this helped, share it. Comment with the habit you'll start today. And subscribe for real science that helps you live with intention, not algorithms.